The stars stretched endlessly across the viewport of the merchant convoy as it moved through the border region of space. Captain Min-jun Park sat in his command chair aboard the frigate Incheon's Pride, watching the 3 cargo vessels his ship was escorting. They carried medical supplies, food synthesizers, and construction materials for a struggling colony world. It was a routine humanitarian mission, the kind humans did regularly across this part of the galaxy. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel," said Lieutenant Chen from the sensor station. Her voice carried a hint of concern. "They're big. Really big." Min-jun straightened in his chair. "How many?" 12 battlecruisers, sir. They're forming a blockade pattern ahead of us." Chen's fingers moved across her console. "They're powering up weapons systems." The bridge crew tensed. Min-jun had been in space for 15 years, and he knew that weapons activation was never a good sign. "Hail them. Let's find out what they want." Before Chen could open a channel, a transmission came through. The main screen flickered to life, showing an alien commander. He was tall and humanoid with gray-blue skin and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle pattern on his face. Gold armor covered his chest, marked with symbols that meant nothing to Min-jun. "Attention, human vessels," the alien said, his voice deep and commanding. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Valorian Armada. You have entered territory claimed by the Valorian Empire. You will submit to immediate inspection and acknowledge our supremacy in this sector." Min-jun glanced at his navigation officer, who shook his head. According to their charts, this was unclaimed space. "Admiral Kethvar, our records show this region is open territory. We're on a peaceful mission to deliver supplies to—" "Your records are irrelevant," Kethvar interrupted. "All space within 10 light-years of the Valorian border belongs to us. You will prepare for boarding or you will be destroyed." The young communications officer, Ensign Park Ji-woo, made a strange sound. Min-jun looked at her and saw she was covering her mouth, her shoulders shaking slightly. Another crew member at the engineering station coughed, turning away from his console. "Admiral, we mean no disrespect to your claim," Min-jun said carefully. "But perhaps we could discuss this diplomatically." "There is nothing to discuss," Kethvar said. His 3 eyes narrowed. "You will also pay tribute for safe passage through our territory, 50% of your cargo." That was when Ji-woo lost control. A laugh escaped her lips, high and clear. She immediately looked horrified, her hands flying to her mouth, but the damage was done. Kethvar's face darkened. "You dare laugh at the Valorian Armada?" Min-jun shot a look at Ji-woo, who looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. But then Chen at the sensor station snorted. Then Lieutenant Kim at tactical. Within seconds, half the bridge crew was struggling not to laugh, their faces red with the effort of holding it in. "Explain this insult immediately!" Kethvar's voice rose with anger. His image on the screen showed him standing now, his fists clenched. "In 40 years of service, no species has ever shown such disrespect to the Valorian fleet." Min-jun held up his hands in a peaceful gesture, though even he felt a smile tugging at his lips. "Admiral, please. My crew means no disrespect to you personally. It's just that—" He paused, trying to find diplomatic words. "Can I ask you a question first?" "Speak quickly, human, before I lose my patience entirely." "Your ships," Min-jun said carefully. "They're using fusion torch drives, correct? And those weapons look like plasma accelerator cannons. Your sensor array appears to be electromagnetic spectrum-based." Kethvar's chest swelled with pride. "Indeed, the finest technology the Valorian Empire has produced over centuries. Each of my battlecruisers can reduce a planet to ash." Another wave of poorly suppressed laughter rippled through the human bridge. Kethvar's 3 eyes widened with rage. "Your crew laughs at the weapons that have conquered 17 star systems." "Admiral," Min-jun said gently, When did your people last have contact with the wider galactic community? We have no need for the corrupt influences of other species, Kethvar said. The Valorian Empire has remained pure and strong by maintaining our isolation. 300 years ago, our wise leaders chose to focus on our own development, away from the chaos of galactic politics. 300 years? Minjun repeated softly. Suddenly everything made sense. He looked at his crew, seeing understanding dawn on their faces too. The laughter died away, replaced by something like pity. Yes, 300 years, Kethvar said. 300 years of strength and independence. Now, you will explain why your primitive species dares to mock us. Minjun took a deep breath. This was going to be difficult. Admiral Kethvar, I apologize for my crew's behavior. They weren't laughing at you. They were laughing at the situation. You see, your ships, they're very impressive for their time. Very impressive. But the technology you're using is superior to anything in this galaxy, Kethvar finished. Was superior? Minjun corrected gently. 300 years ago, Admiral, humanity stopped using fusion torch drives 200 years ago. Plasma cannons are in museums now, and electromagnetic sensors. He trailed off, not wanting to be cruel. The Valorian Admiral's face went through several colors. Impossible. You're attempting to deceive us. I wish I was, Minjun said honestly. Admiral, in the 300 years your people have been isolated, the rest of the galaxy has continued developing. Your ships represent early interstellar technology. They're impressive pieces of history, but they're not current. You lie. Kethvar's voice shook. My weapons are trained on your vessels. One command and you will be destroyed. Minjun made a decision. He nodded to his helmsman. Lieutenant Cho, please demonstrate a level 1 dimensional skip. Place us behind the Admiral's flagship. Yes, sir. The human frigate shimmered and vanished. In the space between seconds, it reappeared directly behind Kethvar's massive battlecruiser, having moved 3,000 kilometers instantaneously. The Valorian sensors never detected the movement. One moment the human ship was in front of them, the next it was behind. On the screen, Kethvar stared at something off-camera, presumably his own sensor displays showing the impossible maneuver. His 3 eyes were wide, his mouth open. We didn't mean to embarrass you, Admiral, Minjun said quietly. But you need to understand the situation before someone gets hurt. Your ships can't track our movements. Your weapons can't lock onto our drives. Your armor can't stop our weapons, though I promise we have no intention of firing on you. Kethvar slowly turned back to face the screen. The anger had drained from his face, replaced by something more complex: shock, confusion, and the beginning of terrible understanding. If we're so primitive, he said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper, why haven't you destroyed us? The question hung in the silence of space between the 2 ships. Minjun looked at Admiral Kethvar's face on the screen and saw genuine confusion there. It was the look of someone whose entire understanding of the universe had just been turned upside down. That's a good question, Admiral, Minjun said, and it deserves a real answer. May I ask you to give me a few minutes to explain? Kethvar's hands gripped the edges of what appeared to be his command console. His knuckles were pale against his gray-blue skin. Speak, human. My weapons are still armed. I understand. I'm not asking you to stand down. I'm just asking you to listen. Minjun leaned forward in his chair. 300 years ago, your people chose isolation. That was your right. But the galaxy didn't stop while you were away. Technology advanced. New species joined the galactic community. Old alliances formed and changed. The universe kept moving. You claim our technology is primitive, Kethvar said. His voice was controlled now, but Minjun could hear the tension in it. Prove it. Minjun nodded to Lieutenant Chen. Show him the comparison data. Nothing classified, just basic public information. Chen's fingers moved across her console. Transmitting now, Admiral. On Kethvar's end, data began flowing across screens. Minjun knew what the Valorian commander was seeing because the same information appeared on a side monitor on the human bridge. Specifications for current galactic standard drives, weapons, sensors, and shields. Publication dates from various species showing when each technology became common. Historical archives showing the transition from fusion-based propulsion to quantum field manipulation drives. The Valorian Admiral's 3 eyes moved rapidly, scanning the information. His face grew more grim with each passing second. Your fusion torch drives can reach about 40% of light speed, Minjun said quietly. Our quantum drives can create temporary dimensional folds, letting us effectively travel at several thousand times light speed. Your plasma cannons fire superheated matter at near-light velocity. Our particle beam weapons manipulate fundamental forces at the quantum level. Your sensors detect electromagnetic radiation. Ours use quantum entanglement to see ships even when they're using stealth systems. Stop, Kethvar said. His voice was hoarse. Minjun fell silent. On the screen, he watched the Valorian Admiral turn to someone off-camera. Science Officer Veldthar, analyze this data. Tell me if it's fabricated. A pause. Then a voice responded, thin and shaking. Admiral, The mathematics are sound. The physics are consistent with theoretical models we've studied but never achieved. This appears to be genuine. Kethvar closed his 3 eyes. When he opened them again, something had changed in his expression. The pride was still there, but it was wounded now, struggling. How long have we been obsolete? You're not obsolete, Minjun said firmly. Your people have knowledge and culture and history. Technology isn't everything. But yes, your military hardware is about 200 years behind current galactic standards. A new voice spoke up from the human bridge. It was Ensign Ji-Woo, the young officer who had laughed first. She looked nervous, but determined. Admiral Kethvar, sir, I want to apologize. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. It's just that your ships, they look exactly like the vessels in our history museums. The Martian colonial fleet used ships just like yours when humans first left our solar system. When I saw them on sensors, it was like seeing dinosaurs come back to life. I was shocked, and I laughed without thinking. I'm sorry. Kethvar stared at her. Museums? Yes, sir. The Human Space History Museum on Luna has a whole wing dedicated to the fusion era. There's a restored battleship called the Soul's Thunder that looks almost identical to your flagship. Visitors can tour it and learn about how humans first explored the stars. The Valorian Admiral's face showed something like pain. We believed ourselves the strongest force in this region of space. We thought our isolation had made us pure and powerful, while other species grew weak through cooperation. That's what you were told, Minjun said. But Admiral, may I share something? Humanity went through something similar. About 400 years ago, some human nations on our homeworld tried isolation. They believed they were stronger alone. They fell behind in technology, in medicine, in culture. When they finally opened their borders again, they discovered the world had changed without them. It was hard for them, embarrassing, painful. But they recovered. They learned. They grew stronger by joining the wider community. You're saying we should abandon our independence? Kethavar's voice had an edge to it. Submit to outside control? No, Minjun said. I'm saying isolation isn't strength. It's just being alone. There's a difference. On the human bridge, Lieutenant Chen spoke up. Captain, I'm reading increased power fluctuations on the Valorian ships. Their weapons are charging to full capacity. Minjun felt his crew tense around him. His hand moved near the alert button that would bring the convoy to full combat readiness. Admiral Kethvar, I hope you're not considering doing something we'll both regret." The Valorian commander's face was a storm of emotions. "You appear in our space with technology that makes our proudest achievements into jokes. You treat our weapons as toys. You speak of museums, and then you ask me not to defend the honor of my people?" "I'm asking you to think clearly," Minjun said. His voice was calm but firm. "Your ships can't hurt us, Admiral. I don't say that as a boast or a threat. It's just a fact. Your weapons will bounce off our shields. Your sensors can't track us if we don't want to be seen. If you fire on us, the only thing you'll accomplish is wasting ammunition and proving that you didn't listen to what I've been telling you." "So we're helpless," Kethvar said bitterly. "Is that what you want me to admit?" "No," Minjun said. "You're not helpless. You're just behind in one area of development. That can be fixed. What I want you to understand is this. We could have destroyed your fleet the moment it appeared. We have the capability. Instead, we're talking. Do you understand what that means?" Kethvar was silent for a long moment. Around him on the screen, Minjun could see other Valorian officers watching their admiral, waiting for his decision. One of them, a younger officer with lighter blue skin, leaned forward and whispered something to Kethvar. The admiral nodded slowly. "You said humanity learned from being isolated," Kethvar said finally. "What did they learn?" "That no species grows strong alone," Minjun answered. "That the universe is better when we share knowledge instead of hoarding it. That real strength comes from having friends, not from having bigger weapons than your neighbors." "Philosophy," Kethvar said, but his tone was less harsh now. "Easy words for the species with superior technology." "Maybe," Minjun admitted. "But Admiral, we're heading to a colony world that was hit by a natural disaster. We're bringing supplies to help rebuild. The colony isn't even human. It's a mixed community of 6 different species. That's where we were going when you intercepted us. Would you like to come with us? See what the galaxy has become while your people were away?" The Valorian admiral looked shocked by the offer. "You're inviting us, after we threatened you?" "Yes," Minjun said simply, "because that's what friends do. And I'd rather make a friend today than an enemy." Admiral Kethvar stared at the human captain for what felt like an eternity. Around him, his bridge crew waited in tense silence. The young officer who had whispered to him earlier stepped closer. "Admiral," she said quietly, "perhaps we should consider the offer." Kethvar turned to look at her. "Lieutenant Sira, are you suggesting we accept help from those who just humiliated us?" "With respect, sir, they didn't humiliate us. Reality did." Sira's voice was steady despite the weight of what she was saying. 300 years is a long time. If what they're showing us is true, and Science Officer Velthar says it is, then we need to understand what we've missed. Our orders were to protect Valorian space from outside contamination, Kethvar said. But even as he spoke the words, they sounded hollow to his own ears. "What are we protecting if we're 300 years behind the rest of the galaxy?" Sira asked. "What does our isolation mean if it's made us weak?" The old admiral felt something crack inside his chest. He had dedicated 40 years to the Valorian military. He had fought pirates and rebels. He had protected 3 Valorian colony worlds from raids. He had risen through the ranks by being strong, decisive, and utterly loyal to the Empire's principles. And now, this human captain was offering him charity. The shame of it burned. But underneath the shame was something else, something he had not felt in many years. Curiosity. "Captain Park," Kethvar said slowly, "if I agree to this, what exactly are you proposing?" On the screen, the human captain seemed to relax slightly. "Travel with us to the colony world. It's about 4 days away at our convoy speed. Send a small delegation aboard our ships if you want. See our technology. Talk with my crew. Ask questions. When we reach the colony, you can see how different species work together. Then you can return to your people and report what you've seen. What you do with that information is entirely up to you. And you ask nothing in return? I ask that you keep an open mind, Minjun said. That's all. Kethavar looked around his bridge. He saw doubt on some faces, anger on others. But on the younger officers like Sira, he saw something else. Hope. When had his crew stopped looking hopeful? I will send a delegation, he said finally. 5 officers, including Lieutenant Sira. But my fleet will follow at a distance. If this is a trap... It's not a trap, Admiral, Minjun interrupted gently. But I understand you need to be cautious. That's reasonable. Have your officers bring whatever recording equipment you want. Document everything. Your people deserve to see the truth. 2 hours later, a Valorian shuttle approached the human frigate. Kethvar watched from his command chair as 5 of his officers transferred to the alien vessel. Sira had volunteered immediately. The others he had chosen carefully. 2 senior officers who would be skeptical and keep watch for deception, and 2 junior officers who represented the younger generation of Valorians. Admiral, the shuttle has docked successfully, his communications officer reported. The humans are... They're greeting our people with full honors, sir. They've assembled an honor guard. Kethvar felt his jaw tighten. Were the humans mocking them? But when the video feed came through from Sira's helmet camera, he saw nothing but genuine respect on the human faces. The honor guard stood at attention. Captain Park himself was there to greet the Valorian officers. Welcome aboard the Inchin's Pride, the human captain said, offering a hand in what Kethvar recognized as a human greeting gesture. I'm honored to host you. Sira hesitated, then grasped the human's hand. Thank you, Captain. I hope we can learn much from this journey. I hope so, too, Minjun said warmly. Come, let me show you to your quarters first. Then we can begin the tour. As the group moved through the human ship's corridors, Kethvar watched through Sira's camera. The walls were smooth and clean. Soft lighting illuminated the passages. Human crew members they passed nodded politely to the Valorian visitors. Everything was so... normal. Kethvar had expected something alien and threatening. Instead, it just looked like a well-run ship. These will be your quarters during the journey, Captain Park said, gesturing to a set of rooms. We've adjusted the atmosphere to match Valorian standard. If you need anything, just ask the room's computer. It has translation software, so it will understand you. One of the senior Valorian officers, Commander Rathvel, spoke up. You're very trusting, Captain. You're giving potential enemies access to your ship's computer? The computer in your quarters has limited access, Minjun explained. It can help with basic needs and answer general questions, but it can't access sensitive systems. Think of it like giving guests access to a library, but not to the vault. Still trusting, Rathvel said, though his tone was more thoughtful than critical. Maybe, Minjun said with a slight smile. But trust has to start somewhere. Would you like to rest first, or shall we begin the tour? The tour, Sira said immediately. The other Valorian officers nodded in agreement. What followed was the most unsettling experience of Kethvar's long career, experienced through the camera feeds of his officers. Captain Park showed them the human ship's medical bay first. The Valorian delegation stood in stunned silence as a human doctor explained regenerative technology that could regrow lost limbs in days, cure diseases at the genetic level, and extend healthy lifespans by decades. We learned the basics from the Zithian species about 80 years ago, the doctor explained. They taught us, we improved it, and now we teach others. That's how it works in the galactic community. We share. In the engineering section, the Valorians saw the quantum reactor that powered the ship. The human chief engineer, a woman named Ji Woo, who introduced herself as Lieutenant Park Ji Woo, no relation to the captain, it's a common name. explained the principles with enthusiasm. The reactor creates a stable quantum field that pulls energy from the dimensional foam of space-time itself, she said. It's incredibly efficient. No radiation, no waste products, and enough power to run the ship for 50 years without refueling. Commander Rathvel examined the reactor with the eye of an experienced engineer. Our fusion reactors need refueling every 2 months, he said quietly. And they're massive compared to this. Fusion was a great stepping stone, Jiwoo said without condescension. Humans used it for almost a century. It taught us a lot about plasma containment and high-energy physics. Those lessons helped us understand quantum field theory better. Back on his flagship, Kethvar watched and listened. Each new revelation felt like another weight added to his chest. The medical technology was beyond anything Valorian science had achieved. The power systems were more efficient by orders of magnitude. Even the simple things, like the quality of the food synthesizers or the clarity of the holographic displays, showed how far behind his people had fallen. The tour continued to the observation deck. The Valorian officers stood before a massive transparent section of hull, staring out at the stars. The human convoy moved through space in a formation that looked almost casual, while the Valorian armada followed at a wary distance. My ship looks so big from here, Sira said softly, looking at the distant Valorian battlecruisers. But it's slow and clumsy compared to yours. Size isn't everything, Captain Park said. He stood beside her, also looking out at the stars. Your ships have good bones. Solid construction. With some upgrades to the drives and weapon systems, they could be formidable vessels. You would help us upgrade our fleet? Rathvel asked. His tone suggested he expected a trap. If your people want that, yes, Minjun said. The technology isn't secret. Most species in the galactic community share basic designs freely. It's more advanced military technology that's restricted, and even that is shared with allies. Why? The question came from one of the younger Valorian officers. Why share your advantages? Minjun turned to look at the young officer. Because a galaxy where everyone has decent ships and medicine and power generation is a safer galaxy for everyone. Because species that work together are less likely to fight each other. Because we remember when we were the newcomers, struggling to understand technology that older species took for granted. They helped us. Now we help others. That's how civilization survives. The human captain pulled up a star chart on a nearby display. It showed thousands of points of light, each one marked with symbols indicating species affiliation. The Valorian territory appeared as a small cluster of stars, surrounded by a notation marked, uncontacted, historical isolation. This is the known galaxy, Minjun said. Over 3,000 species in regular contact, hundreds more like yours that we know exist, but haven't communicated with in generations. Every species you see on this map faced a choice at some point, join the wider community or stay separate. Some chose isolation for a while, like you did. Most eventually chose connection. Do you know why? Sira stared at the map. Why? Because being part of something bigger than yourself matters, Minjun said simply. Because when a plague hits one world, others send medicine. When a colony faces starvation, others send food. When a species discovers something wonderful, they share it. We're all richer for it, not just in technology, but in art and music and stories and ideas. Admiral Kethvar, watching from his distant flagship, felt something shift in his understanding of the universe. The journey to the colony world took 4 days. For Admiral Kethvar, watching through the cameras of his officers aboard the human ship, each day brought new revelations that shook his understanding of the galaxy. On the 2nd day, Lieutenant Sira sat in the human ship's dining area, sharing a meal with several human crew members. The food was simple but good. Synthesized from energy but tasting real. Around her, humans talked casually about their homes, their families, their hopes for the future. One young engineer spoke excitedly about her daughter's first day at school. A security officer joked about his terrible cooking skills. They were just people, living ordinary lives between the stars. "Is it strange for you?" Sira asked them. "Traveling so far from home?" The engineer, Jiwoo, smiled. "My home is where my family is, but also space feels like home too now. I've been on ships since I was 18. That's 12 years. The stars feel comfortable." "Don't you worry about danger?" Sira pressed. "Unknown threats?" "Sure, sometimes," another crew member said. "But we have protocols. We have allies. And honestly, most species we meet are just trying to live their lives, same as us. The universe isn't as scary as you might think when you have friends watching your back." Sira thought about that. In Valorian culture, they had been taught that the outside galaxy was full of threats and corruption, that only by staying pure and isolated could they remain strong. But these humans didn't seem corrupt. They seemed normal, happy even. On the third day, Commander Rathvel asked to see the ship's tactical systems. Captain Park agreed, with the caveat that some information would be restricted for security reasons. What Rathvel saw both impressed and disturbed him. The targeting systems could track thousands of objects simultaneously. The defensive shields could redistribute energy in milliseconds to counter specific weapon types. The weapons themselves had multiple firing modes, from disabling shots to planet-destroying power. "You could destroy my entire fleet in seconds," Rathvel said. It wasn't a question. Captain Park nodded. "Yes, we could have done it the moment you appeared. Does that frighten you?" "It should," Rathvel said, "but strangely it doesn't. You've had this power over us for days now, and you've done nothing but show us hospitality. Either you're playing a very long game or you genuinely mean what you say about cooperation." "We mean it," Park said. "Commander, humanity spent centuries fighting itself before we reached the stars. Wars, genocides, terrible things. We almost destroyed ourselves several times. When we finally got to space and met other species, we had a choice: bring our violence with us or leave it behind. We chose to leave it behind, not because we're saints, but because we learned that fighting only makes everyone weaker." "What if someone attacks you?" Rathvel asked. "What if some species doesn't share your peaceful philosophy?" "Then we defend ourselves," Park said calmly. "We're not pacifists, Commander. We're just not looking for fights. There's a difference. We have strong military forces. We just prefer to use them as deterrents rather than as threats." Back on his flagship, Admiral Kethvar discussed this with his senior staff. "They have the power to rule this entire region of space," his second-in-command said. "But they don't. Why?" "Perhaps ruling is harder than it looks," Kethvar said thoughtfully. "Or perhaps they understand something we don't." On the fourth day, the colony world appeared on the scanners. It was a beautiful planet, mostly blue-green with swirling white clouds. As the convoy entered orbit, Sira stood on the observation deck with several human crew members, looking down at the world. "What happened here?" she asked. "Major earthquake," Lieutenant Chen explained. She had taken a liking to the young Valorian officer and spent time explaining various systems to her. "The colony is built near a tectonic boundary. 3 months ago, a quake measuring 8.9 destroyed several settlements. Thousands died, tens of thousands lost their homes. The colony sent out a distress call." "And you came," Sira said. "We and 6 other species," Chen said. "Look at the orbital traffic." Sira looked at the scanner display and saw dozens of ships from various species. Some she recognized from the galactic database the humans had shared. Others were completely new to her. All were marked as humanitarian vessels. "All of them came to help?" Sira asked in wonder. "That's what communities do," Chen said. "When someone hurts, others help. Come on, we're going down to the surface. Captain Park says you and your team can join us if you want." An hour later, Sira stood on the surface of an alien world for the first time in her life. The air was breathable for Valorians, though slightly richer in oxygen than she was used to. It made her feel energized and slightly dizzy. Around her, the colony stretched out, a mixture of permanent buildings and temporary shelters housing the displaced. What struck her most was the diversity. She saw humans working alongside tall, insectoid beings with 6 limbs. She saw crystalline creatures that glowed with internal light directing floating construction drones. She saw small, furry beings operating medical stations, dozens of species all working together toward a common goal. Captain Park led the Valorian delegation through the colony. They watched humans helping rebuild homes destroyed by the quake. The houses weren't for humans. They were for a species of large, slug-like beings that needed high-humidity environments. But the humans worked with the same dedication as if they were building homes for their own people. "Why?" Commander Rathvel asked, watching a human engineer covered in mud and sweat as she installed a water purification system. "These beings aren't your species. This isn't your world. Why work so hard for them?" The engineer, overhearing the question, paused and wiped her forehead. "Because they needed help," she said simply. "Because when I was 5, my family's habitat on Mars had a life support failure. We would have died, but a Zethian rescue ship arrived in time. They saved 40 human families that day. They didn't ask for payment. They just helped because we needed it. So now, when someone else needs help, I go. I'm paying forward what was given to me." Sira felt something crack in her chest, the way Admiral Kethvar had felt days before. All her life she had been taught that the Valorian way was the only good way, that other species were dangerous, untrustworthy, corrupt. But here was evidence contradicting everything she had been taught, species working together, helping each other without expecting payment, building something larger than themselves. In the evening, the Valorian delegation gathered in a temporary shelter that the humans had set up for them. They shared a meal and talked quietly among themselves. "I don't understand these humans," one of the junior officers said. "They have such power, but they use it to build houses for slug beings and deliver food to colonies." "Maybe that's why they have power," Sira said softly. "Because they use it to help instead of to threaten." Commander Rathavel was quiet for a long time. Finally he spoke. "I need to report to Admiral Kethvar. He needs to see what we've seen." That night, Kethvar reviewed all the footage his officers had gathered. Hours of material showing the galactic community working together. Species sharing technology, sharing labor, sharing compassion, and throughout it all, humans seemed to be everywhere, not leading, but participating, helping, building bridges between species. The Admiral sat alone in his quarters, staring at the wall. 40 years of service, 40 years of believing that Valorian isolation was strength, 40 years of thinking that their military might made them important. And now he discovered that while his people had been alone, the rest of the galaxy had built something incredible without them. He thought about his orders from the Valorian High Council. Protect the borders, keep outsiders away, maintain purity. Had those orders helped his people, or had they condemned them to stagnation? Kethvar made a decision. He opened a communication channel to Valoria itself, using the emergency command codes that would reach the High Council directly. It would take hours for the message to arrive, and hours more for a response. But this couldn't wait. He recorded everything: his encounter with the humans, the technology comparison, the footage from the colony world. He added his own assessment, knowing it would likely end his career. "Honored Council," he said to the recording, "I have spent 4 days observing humanity and their allies. I must report that everything we believed about the outside galaxy is wrong. They are not corrupt. They are not weak. They are strong precisely because they cooperate. And we have fallen behind. not just in technology, but in understanding what makes a civilization truly great. I request permission to bring human delegates to Valoria. Our people deserve to see what I have seen. What we do with that knowledge must be their choice, but they deserve the truth. He sent the message, knowing he couldn't take it back. Then he waited for the response that would change everything. The response from the Valorian High Council came after 2 days of tense waiting. Admiral Kethvar read the message 3 times, hardly believing what he was seeing. Return immediately. Bring the humans. We must discuss many things. The words were simple, but Kethvar knew the weight behind them. The High Council never admitted uncertainty, never acknowledged that they might need to discuss anything. For them to use such language meant his message had shaken them deeply. Captain Park agreed to the request without hesitation. "Of course we'll come," he said when Kethvar contacted him. "This is what we hoped would happen." "You hoped I would invite you to my homeworld?" Kethvar asked, surprised. "We hoped you would choose to open a dialogue," Park clarified. "The invitation is just the first step." The combined fleet, human convoy and Valorian armada, set course for Valoria. During the journey, Lieutenant Sira and several other Valorian officers remained aboard the human ships, continuing to learn. Kethvar watched from his flagship as the young officer who had once stood proudly on his bridge now laughed easily with human crew members, sharing meals and stories. When had his people forgotten how to laugh like that? When had duty and pride replaced simple joy? Valoria appeared on the scanners 3 days later. The planet was beautiful, covered in golden cities and green forests. From space it looked prosperous and peaceful. But Kethvar saw it differently now. He saw a world that had spent 300 years talking only to itself, thinking only its own thoughts, growing old without new ideas to keep it young. "It's beautiful," Captain Park said respectfully as the ships entered orbit. "Your people have maintained it well." "Maintained," Kethvar repeated. The word stung because it was accurate. Valoria had been maintained, preserved, kept exactly as it was. Nothing new had been built in centuries. Nothing had changed. They had confused preservation with strength. The landing party from both sides descended to the surface. Captain Park brought a small delegation, Lieutenant Chen, Engineer Jiwoo, and 3 others. They wore formal uniforms but no weapons. Admiral Kethvar led the Valorian side with Lieutenant Sira and Commander Rathvel. The Valorian High Council met them in the Grand Assembly Hall, a massive building of golden stone that had stood for 1,000 years. 12 council members sat in elevated seats, looking down at the visitors. Their faces showed various emotions: curiosity, concern, hostility. The oldest member, Council Elder Threnvar, spoke first. "Admiral Kethvar, you have brought outsiders to our sacred world. Explain yourself." Kethvar stepped forward. His heart pounded, but his voice remained steady. "Honored Council, I have served Valoria for 40 years. I have always followed orders without question, but I cannot stay silent about what I've learned. These humans and their allies have shown me that we have been living in a bubble, believing ourselves strong while the galaxy moved forward without us. We chose isolation to protect our culture," another council member said sharply. "To keep our people pure from outside contamination." "And what have we protected?" Sira spoke up suddenly. All eyes turned to the young lieutenant. She swallowed nervously but continued. "Honored Council, I've seen the galaxy beyond our borders. I've seen species working together, helping each other, building things that no single species could build alone. Meanwhile, we've spent 300 years maintaining what we already had. We haven't created anything new. We haven't grown. We've just stayed the same. Staying the same is not a weakness," Threnvar said. "It is when the universe around you is changing," Captain Park said respectfully. He stepped forward and bowed his head in a gesture of respect. Honored Council, I'm Captain Minjun Park of the human frigate Inchin's Pride. I want to thank you for allowing us to visit your world. It's an honor. Some of the council members seemed taken aback by his politeness. They had expected arrogance, perhaps, or demands, not courtesy. What do you want from us, human? Threnvar asked. Nothing, Park said simply. We don't want anything from you. We came because Admiral Kethvar asked us to. We came because we believe you deserve to know what's happening in the galaxy. What you do with that information is entirely your decision. You don't want our resources? Our territory? No, sir. Your territory is yours. If you want to maintain your isolation, that's your right. The galactic community respects the choices of sovereign species. Another council member leaned forward. She was younger than Threnvar, with keen, intelligent eyes. But you think we're wrong to stay isolated? Park considered his words carefully. I think isolation has costs that aren't always visible until you see what you've missed. But I also think every species needs to find its own path. I can't tell you what's right for your people. Only you can decide that. Show them, Kethvar said suddenly. Show them what you showed me. With the Council's permission, the humans projected holographic displays showing the galactic community, thousands of species in cooperation, medical advances that extended life and cured diseases, artistic works that combined the traditions of multiple cultures, scientific discoveries made possible by sharing knowledge across species boundaries. And yes, conflicts too. The displays didn't hide that the galaxy had problems. But even the conflicts were being addressed through cooperation and dialogue more often than through war. The council watched in silence. As the presentation continued, Kethvar saw their expressions shift. Some remained hostile, defensive, but others showed wonder, curiosity, even longing. When the presentation ended, Threnvar spoke. This is impressive, but it doesn't address our fundamental concern. We isolated ourselves because we saw how contact with outside species corrupted other civilizations. We saw cultures lose their identity, their traditions, their uniqueness. How do we know the same won't happen to us? You don't, Park said honestly. Change is risky. Opening yourselves to outside influence will change your culture. But cultures are always changing, even in isolation. The question isn't whether you'll change, but whether you'll have input into how you change. In the galactic community, you can share your culture with others while learning from theirs. You can choose what to adopt and what to preserve. In isolation, you can only preserve what you already have. Engineer Ji Woo stepped forward. If I may add something, Honored Council, I studied cultural preservation at university. One of my professors said something that stuck with me. She said that trying to freeze a culture in place is like trying to preserve a plant by putting it in a box. It doesn't preserve the plant. It just kills it slowly. Cultures need new ideas and new experiences the way plants need sunlight and water. Otherwise, they don't stay the same. They wither. Threnvar frowned. You compare our ancient civilization to a plant? I compare it to something living, Ji Woo said, because cultures are alive. They grow, they adapt, or they die. Those are the only options. The council chamber erupted in argument. Some members agreed with Ji Woo's assessment. Others angrily rejected it. Voices rose and fell as centuries of policy were suddenly questioned. Kethvar stood silently, letting his leaders debate. This was their decision to make. Finally, Threnvar raised his hand for silence. This is not a decision we can make today, but neither can we ignore what we've learned. I propose a compromise. We will establish a trial period of limited contact, exchange programs, cultural ambassadors, technology sharing agreements. In 5 years, we will reassess and decide whether to continue or return to full isolation. Does the council agree? After more debate, the vote was close. but it passed. Valoria would cautiously open its doors to the wider galaxy. In the days that followed, details were worked out. Valorian students would attend universities on human and allied worlds. Human engineers would help upgrade Valorian technology while respecting their aesthetic preferences. Cultural exchange programs would allow both sides to share art, music, history, and philosophy. Lieutenant Sira volunteered to be one of the first exchange officers. "I want to see more of the galaxy," she told Admiral Keithvar. "I want to learn everything I can and bring it back to help our people." Kethvar smiled at her enthusiasm. "You'll make a fine ambassador, Lieutenant. Perhaps a better one than an old warrior like me." "You're not staying in the military, sir?" Sira asked, surprised. "The Council has asked me to retire," Kethavar said. There was no bitterness in his voice. "They're right to do so. I represent the old way of thinking. They need new leadership for this new era." He paused, then smiled. "But they've offered me a position as cultural liaison. It seems they think my experience with humans might be valuable." "It is valuable, sir," Sira said firmly. 6 months later, Captain Park received a message from Valoria. It was a simple video showing a ceremony. Valorian and human engineers stood together, celebrating the completion of the first joint project, a hospital that combined Valorian architectural beauty with human medical technology. Patients from both species would be treated there. It was small, but it was a beginning. The message ended with a note from Admiral Kethavar. "Now, Ambassador Kethvar. Thank you for laughing at our ships instead of destroying them. Thank you for choosing compassion when you could have chosen conquest. You've taught us that strength isn't about having the biggest weapons. It's about having the wisdom to use your power to build instead of to destroy. We have much to learn, but for the first time in 300 years, we're learning again. And that feels like being alive." Captain Park showed the message to his crew. Lieutenant Chen smiled and said, "I told you laughing was the right response." "You laughed because you were surprised," Park reminded her. "Maybe," Chen admitted. "But it worked out, didn't it?" Park looked out at the stars through the viewport. Somewhere out there, the Valorians were beginning to explore again, to connect again, to grow again. And humanity had gained new friends simply by choosing kindness over cruelty. "Yes," he said quietly, "it worked out perfectly." Far across the galaxy, other species watched the Valorian integration with interest. Some saw opportunity for new trade partnerships. Some saw a diplomatic success to study and replicate. But all of them noted how the humans had handled the situation, with humor, patience, and ultimately compassion. One ambassador from an ancient species remarked to her colleague, "The humans could have destroyed the Valorian fleet in seconds. Instead, they helped them rejoin civilization. That's not weakness. That's a kind of strength that's far more dangerous to their enemies and far more valuable to their friends." "Dangerous how?" her colleague asked. "Because you can't fight someone who makes allies everywhere they go," she said. "The humans win not by being the strongest, but by being the species everyone wants on their side. That's a power no weapon can match." And somewhere on the bridge of the Inchin's Pride, Captain Minjun Park simply went back to work, already plotting the course for their next mission. There were always more species to meet, more problems to solve, more friends to make. That was the human way. To reach out instead of to strike out, to build bridges instead of walls, and to remember that laughter shared in good spirit was sometimes the beginning of the greatest friendships.